Hello everyone and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. I am Captain Zelnick and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a tutorial about celestial phenomena. We're going to be going through all of the celestial phenomena, how to place them, and how to build a battlefield. So this is going to be a little bit longer of a video. You may want to get a drink, a snack, the usual stuff if you're trying to figure out how to actually set up your board, because this actually is kind of a bit of an ephemeral topic that can be kind of confusing. Now, Battlefleet Gothic does not have a set standard way of establishing your celestial phenomena or setting up your board. There's not a rule specific way. So if you guys just want to be like, I want this here, bleh, you can do that. There's nothing that says so. Now, there are a couple of suggestions in the actual rulebook that I tend to use. We'll go over that. But ultimately, the game is not firm on what is acceptable and non-acceptable. There are requirements for things to go on the board, and there are generators that you should be using, but remember that the goal is to make a fair battlefield. Now, sometimes when you roll it and generate it randomly, it's going to make an unfair battlefield. That happens in this game, because sometimes you're just not in an advantageous position, and it's up to you to make the best with, frankly, nothing good happening. You got to make lemonade out of your lemon sometimes. So always remember, though, it is a game. You should be talking with your fellow player to make an even battlefield. And when things get really intense, like if you're playing in a campaign or you're playing in a tournament, you really got to be sure that your table is at the very least fair enough. So the book has 3 methods for setting up celestial phenomena that it will recommend to you. Let's have a look and see what they say. One player positions all the celestial phenomena on the table. His opponent can pick which table edge to deploy from. Okay, so basically one person puts it all down, and the other person can choose which side of the table. The next one is divide the table into 60 centimeter square areas, roll a d6 for each area, and on a 4 or more, the area contains celestial phenomena, which is determined using the appropriate battle zone generator. Roll a d6 to determine which of the generators to use for this battlefield, and then roll on the generator for celestial phenomena, etc. I rather enjoy this one. Another alternative is use your fleet attack ratings to determine which battle zone the battle is fought in, and then generate as normal. This represents the 2 fleets trying to pick their ground by offering battle where it suits them best. So each player secretly chooses a battle zone and adds the number of the battle zone to his fleet attack rating. Both players then declare their total score. The player with the highest score wins and the battle is fought in the zone he chooses. So, what are the battle zones? As beautifully described right here, the battle zones are shown. 1 is flare region, 2 is mercurial zone, 3 is the inner biosphere, 4 is the primary biosphere, 5 is outer reaches, and 6 is deep space. All of these are relatively obvious in their description. So, the flare region, which is basically you're right next to the sun. You're trying to get your ship a suntan while you're fighting in the middle of solar flares and radiation bursts. It's chaotic to fight in this area, and I kind of enjoy doing it just because it's so crazy. Your options on the D6 roll are solar flare, radiation burst, asteroid field, D3 gas or dust clouds, and potentially a small or medium-sized planet. Again, it's a matter of there are going to be times when you roll off on these and you'll have multiples, like you'll have multiple planets. I fought on boards with 3 planets on them because of how we've rolled. It happens, and you know what? It's still legal. Okay, Mercurial Zone. Mercurial Zone is a little less nasty, but still pretty darned chaotic. You get solar flares, radiation bursts, asteroid fields, D3 gas and dust clouds, more D3 gas and dust clouds, and planets between small and medium in size. Now, the inner biosphere is where things thankfully start getting a little more tolerable. You can potentially get radiation bursts or solar flares. You still get a lot of asteroid fields and dust clouds, and again, potential for a planet, small to medium. In the primary biosphere, you no longer have problems with the sun being angry, but a lot of asteroids, a lot of gas, and a far greater chance for a small or medium-sized planet. Moving out to the outer reaches, we have a lot more asteroids and a lot more opportunity for really big worlds. This is where all the gas giants pretty much exist. So asteroid D3 plus 1 asteroid fields, D3 asteroid fields, gas and dust clouds, lots of gas and dust clouds. Planets between small and large, but no medium. And again, planet small to large with no option for medium. Deep space is where things get chaotic again, because while you have your gas, dust clouds, and asteroid fields and small planets, you have the opportunity for a warp rift. And warp rifts are ridiculous. We'll get into that in a moment. Let's get into the actual tabletop features. First things first, whenever you place down terrain, the sunward edge matters because that determines the orientation of all your stellar phenomena. So as you can see in this template here, the stellar phenomena will orient itself facing effectively. So the broad side, the longer side, will face the sun or face away from the sun if you want to go that way. So if it's the sun is on 1, all of the stellar phenomena will be vertical to the in comparison to the board. If it's 2 through 3 or 4 through 5, it'll be horizontal along the board edge. So I hope that makes sense. Now, this matters a lot more when you are fighting closer to the sun because that will heavily affect things like shooting and solar flares. So bear that in mind. Now, gas and dust clouds. Effectively, gas and dust clouds are giant blast markers. Now, what does this mean? It means if you move into it, you're -1 shield, and you are slowed down. To ships in base contact, gas and dust clouds have the same effect as a single blast marker in all respects, firing on movement, shields, leadership, etc. Elder and their kin can make a leadership check to ignore all the effects because they're jerks, and their escorts may re-roll the result because they're jerks. If passed, they take no damage or suffer any effects on being in contact with it. A ship having 0 shield strength, if a ship having 0 shield strength explodes due to contact with the gas cloud, the explosion will originate at a point where the ship entered the field, which is embarrassing, but it does happen. And this is a handy little identifier for how you set up your gas and dust clouds. Note the sunward edge direction. Now, placement, they have a generator right here. Now, asteroid fields. Asteroid fields are like gas clouds on crack. They are far, far, far more dangerous, but critically, they block line of sight for fighter, and any torpedo that strikes them is detonated. Ships moving through an asteroid field or coming into contact with the edge of one must pass a leadership check on 2d6 to navigate it successfully. If you're going all ahead full, 3d6. It's not easy to navigate it. Escort ships may re-roll the leadership test if they fail, but the second roll stands, whether or not it's successful. A ship that fails the leadership suffers D6 damage from asteroid impacts, but its shields will block damage as normal. Escort and capital ship squadron make the leadership normally, once for the whole squadron. In the case of the capital ship squadrons that fail the test, each ship that comes in base contact with the asteroid field in any way suffers the D6 damage. Escort squadrons re-roll this for free, as always. But basically, if you're in a squadron of cap ships and you bomb it, everyone takes the damage. Blast markers are not placed when asteroid impacts take shields down. However, the ship will be slowed down by 5 centimeters as if it is moved through a blast markers that turn. Hulks which drift into an asteroid field are destroyed. Attack craft and squadrons that move through asteroid field are destroyed on a roll of a 6, which is pretty universal for all stellar phenomena that are passable. You cannot shoot into or out of an asteroid field. However, shooting between ships inside of an asteroid field is okay, but they suffer from a negative shift. If both ships and target ships are both inside the asteroid field, lances and weapon batteries have no more than 10 centimeter range. Nova cannons don't work, and torpedoes cannot be used. So your weapons are super short range in this area. That's usually not much of a problem because asteroid fields are pretty small, as you can see here. Attack craft work normally, but again, they repeat that. Asteroid fields are treated as minefields. If you wish to shoot at them, you must first pass a leadership test to shoot at an asteroid field. So you can actually shoot the damn thing if you want, even if it is only possible target with the blast marker placed in contact with the asteroid field facing direction the shooting came from for every roll of a 6. Placement, obviously, The diagram is right here and very obvious. Note the sunward edge. Okay, now for crazy shit. Warp rifts! Let's make things really funny. The effect, a warp rift blocks line of fire and any torpedoes that strike it are detonated. Hulks which drift into the rift disappear, never to be seen again, so they may not be salvaged after the battle. Attack craft squadrons which move into the rift are destroyed. Ships moving into a warp rift must pass a leadership test on 3d6 to navigate it successfully. If the ship passes the test, it may be repositioned. Ooh! 2d6 times 10 centimeters away from the rift, pointing it in any direction. If it fails, the ship disappears from the battle altogether. It is lost in the warp. Remember, it's up to 2d6 times 10. Roll a d6 for each ship lost in the warp after the game. On a 1, it is lost from the warp, doomed forever to drift the tides of the Immaterium until its crew die. On a 2 for a 6, it's temporarily lost and find its way back to the fleet. So be very careful, but that's a huge repositioning and can change the tide of a battle. Also, if you nail it on an enemy with a low leadership, you can effectively watch them destroy their own ship. The Sisters of Battle fleet has the ability to, very rarely, place warp rifts on the table, so that is a fun little thing to remember. Placement. Use a strip of white paper, cloth, or cotton wool to represent the warp rift. It's D3 by 5 centimeters wide and D3 by 5 centimeters long. Again, using the same rules as all other astral phenomena. Now, we're on to the realm of planets. Planets change the nature of the board dramatically. So, planets. Less than 1%, that's all fluff effects. Planets represented by a template or model or a ball placed on the tabletop. When the ship's stem is actually on stem, remember stem, on a planet template as opposed to behind it, the template does not block line of sight. Basically, imagine yourself as being between somewhere in its orbit that's still visible. If multiple ships are on a planetary template, they can all see each other. A ship counts as being upon the planetary template if the stem touches the template, not merely if its base is in contact or its base partially overlaps the template. Torpedoes are destroyed when they come in contact, and you're going to really ruin a bunch of people's day with the template's edge, either when launching them towards the planet or away from it. Basically, it's a no torpedo zone. Hulks drift on the planet are destroyed, no surprises there. Now, every planet is surrounded by an area of space where the gravitational pull is strong enough to affect shipping. This effect is referred to as the gravity well. Now, what does that do? Well, first, size. Small planets have a 15 centimeter gravity well. Mediums have 16 to 20. Have a 16. Wait, oh, it's the size of the template here. I'm sorry. Small planets are 15, mediums are 16 to 25, large are 26 to 50 centimeters in size. The gravity wells are up to 10 centimeters from the template edge on a small, 15 for a medium, and 30 centimeters for a large. Ships within the gravity well may make a free 45-degree turn at the beginning and end of their move, but it always must be made towards the planet. The ship does not have to move its minimum distance before making its free turn. Free turns provided by gravwells can be used even when the ship cannot normally turn, such as when on all ahead full or lock on, special orders. They can also be combined with come to new heading special orders. This does not change the fact that the free turn can only be used before the start of the move and again only at the end. So this gives a ship a huge amount of flexibility and maneuverability. A ship within the gravity well may elect to enter or high or low orbit. The ship does not have to move while it's in high orbit, but a stationary ship uses the defenses column for gunnery purpose if it elects to do so. So basically, you can remain stationary for no cost. A ship that enters low orbit, however, is removed from play and placed on the separate low orbit table, which I will show you here in a moment. Planets are usually so far apart that only one will be placed on the tabletop, although in a spectacular when planets collide scenario, you may want to place two planets in shockingly close proximity. Planets can have rings. So, they basically are made up of gas dust rings and asteroids, represented by dust clouds or asteroid fields. Placement. If there's a large planet on the table, roll a d6. On a 5 or a 6, it has rings around it. Place d3 rings around the planet, then roll a d6 to see what sort each ring is. 1 through 4 is gas and dust, and 5 through 6 is asteroid. Each ring is d6 centimeters wide and begins at d6 times 5 centimeters away from the planet's edge. Note that some may end up merging into one another, but that's fine. Some planets will have moons. Moons are small planets. Medium planets typically have D3 minus 1, and large planets have D6 minus 2 moons. Moons are up to 5 centimeters in diameter. A planet's moons are placed 2d6 times 10 from the planet. Roll randomly to see which direction they are from the planet. Now, other important effects. Now, this is all about fighting sunward against the sun itself. So bear this in mind when you are fighting in flare region, mercurial zone, and inner biosphere. Okay, you have these following effects. Any firing conducted towards the sunward edge of the table doubles the column shifts for long and short range. So if you are shooting at long range, that's 2 right column shifts. It's bad. But if you are really close, it's 2 left column shifts. It being at long range, your sensors are being interfered with by the sun's radiation, but at short range, the enemy is silhouetted against the sun and easier to see. Now, to determine if you're shooting sunward, place the bearing compass over the firing ship with the arrows parallel with the sunward edge. If the target is within the arc of facing the sunward edge, you are shooting sunward. At long range, the powerful photosphere blinds things. It's just a repeating of that. Solar flares. Most stars periodically release explosive bursts of energy. Basically, it's the sun trying to slap somebody. Now, this can even irritate shielded vessels as well. What are the effects of a solar flare? Roll a d6 at the start of each turn. If more than one flare was generated as part of the celestial phenomena, roll a d6 per flare generated. On any roll of a 6, a flare occurs, but a flare will only manifest once per game. Once the flare occurs, this roll is no longer needed to be rolled. Each ship on the tabletop has 1 blast marker placed sunward of them. Any ship without shields will suffer 1 hit and take a critical damage on a roll of 4 or more. Basically, everyone's being slapped by a bombardment cannon. On a d6, roll 4 or more on d6. On a roll a d6 for each ordnance marker. On a 4, they are destroyed. Eldar and their jerk kin can make a leadership check to ignore all effects of solar flares, and their escorts may reroll this result for free because they're jerks. If passed, it will take no damage, but instead turn directly away from the solar flare and move 2d6 centimeters. So, in effect, this makes fighting again close to planets, and specifically close to the sun, really, really interesting, because it can change the course of a battle. So, radiation bursts. This is basically the electromagnetic radiation being shot out from the sun and interfering with command. Roll a d6 at the start of each turn. If more than 1 radiation burst is generated, roll for each. For each roll of 5 or 6, a radiation burst occurs. Only 1 radiation burst happens per turn, even if multiple radiation bursts were rolled for. Roll d6 to see what the interference level of the burst is, and all ships on the table reduce the leadership value by the interference level. So a radiation burst occurs and it's 3, everyone suffers -3 leadership. Now, this can happen every round, so bear that in mind. In addition to the reduced leadership for the interference, fleet commanders may only use their rerolls of command checks for their own ship or squadron during a radiation burst. Eldar are not immune to this effect. So, bear that in mind. Now, low orbit. Now, this is something that I will show you in a moment, but the most important element when it comes to the low orbit table is that you can crash, okay? Now, there are certain elements that make fighting in this area difficult because ships are not designed to fire in gravity and atmosphere. So, ships in low orbit do not have to move and capital ships do not have a minimum move distance before they can turn. To represent interference from the planet's gravity as well, and the outermost edge of the atmosphere, all firepower in shooting in low orbit suffers 1 column shift to the right, and lances and nova cannons retire a 4+ roll to fire, and torpedoes may not be fired at all. Ships which move within 45 centimeters of the planet edge will be gripped by the heart of the gravity well and start to be dragged down. All ships within 45, the table edge, are moved directly towards the planet without changing, facing, or turning in any way. The distance that they move is dependent on the size of the planet. 5 for small, 8 for medium, and 10 for large. Any ship that moves off the planet table edge is totally destroyed because they frickin' crash. Escorts and transports which voluntarily move off the table edge are said to have landed and are removed from play. Capital ships cannot land, with a couple of exceptions. If a ship in low orbit moves off the table from the other edge, it is assumed to have left low orbit and placed back on the main table. Touching the edge of the planet, a ship may not enter low orbit and then leave it again in the same turn. So if you are doing a planetary assault and trying to bombard the surface, remember that a lot of those surface bombardment weapons are 30-centimeter range only. So you're going to have to get within this gravity well and start getting dragged down to it. Apart from this, movement and combat is resolved in each player's turn as normal. So, now, that is, in effect, the stellar phenomena and all of its rules. Now let's actually build a map. How about that? So here we go, we have a map. I'm using the new version of Vassal for this, and as you can see, it's already squared off. I call it quadranting even if I know there's more than 4. Maybe octants, because it's 8? Yeah, it's octants. Anyway, you have the map already subdivided, and Vassal is nice enough to give you dice for generation. Now, when I do this, I roll a d6 on a 4+, everything has a piece of terrain. Now, when I was trying to play things particularly interestingly, I would roll each and everything got d3 pieces of terrain because I like nice crinkly board edges. So, in the end, let's build a map. Let's actually build a terrain. So let's go back up here and figure out where in the world we are in the system. Now, sometimes you can pick and choose, sometimes you can't. So here we go. I'm going to roll a d6. Let me get back to Vassal. I'm going to take this dice here and move it to the center, and I'll roll a d6. I rolled a 5. We are in the outer reaches. So the next thing that I would do is I would roll a d6 for each of these octants. That's a 6, so that's going to be fun. That's a 3. That's a 3, so nothing is happening here. 4 or better here. There's something happening here. What is it? A 1. What's happening here? There is terrain. It's another 6. Ugh. There's another terrain. There is terrain here. It's a 5. There's more terrain here. It's a 4. There's terrain. No terrain there. And no terrain there. So I'm going to move the nose out. I totally forgot which ones were and were not. So I'm going to assume this 3 was not, but that 1 was because I like nice, crinkly, and interesting terrain. So what is a 6? On the outer reaches generator, a 5 and a 6 are planets, so this is going to be an interesting map. Roll again. 1 through 3 is small, and a 4 through 6 is large. So back to Vassal. What is this? It's a small planet. So we go up to pieces, go to celestial bodies. I'm going to pick a small planet. Let's make it an ice planet, and I can place this effectively anywhere I want in this area. So anywhere in this quadrant. So I can put it as close to here as I want. I can put it over on the edge if I want to be a jerk. Now, one thing that I almost forgot to do, determining where the sun is. 3. So the sun is parallel to the board edge, so parallel to the long board edge. So I would normally place a token here, usually this magma planet, to help me remember, but it just means that everything is parallel to the long board edge. So I have placed my planet. Now remember in Vassal, when you unselect it, it's stuck there. You can't take it away. So next, there was nothing in this quadrant, but this one over here was a 1. What is 1 on our table? D3 asteroid. No, that's deep space. D3 plus 1 asteroid fields. So what are we getting? Roll. It is 2 asteroid fields. Now again, handy in Vassal, it has a asteroid field generator. Now before you deselect, go to dice and roll. Ooh, big block of rocks. Okay, so again, this is a perfect square. I don't have to worry about facing. Next one. Take it, keep it selected, and roll. Another big block of rocks. All right, this is another planet. How big is our planet? It's a large planet. So we go to planets, large. Let's do a ice giant. Oh God, that's really big. Now, here's the cool thing. You can determine how many rings it has, and you can rotate it. And you can show the field of gravity, which is, I like to have the field of gravity present on it, just so it helps us out. Now, I have to be very careful because I don't want to deselect this, but I have to roll to see if it has rings. And does it have option for moons? I guess it'll actually make me, it'll actually have to make me put them out as normal. So we have rings. 1, 2, and 3, decrement and increment the number of rings. So let's see how many rings we have. So we have to go back down to planets, warp rifts, planets, ringed planets. So we have a large planet. Large planet on a 5 or a 6. So if I don't want to deselect things, I can just go up to here. Sorry. I go up to there, and I can roll, and this thing remains selected on the board. Now, a 5 or 6, it has a ring. It has a ring. Now, how many rings does it have? Place D3 rings. How many rings do I have? So it'll have 2 rings. So what I do then is I do planet rings, toggle ring 1, and then planet rings, toggle ring 2. Oh, I just deselected it. Darn. Oh, that's the downside of this. But anyway, the planet now has rings. It does not actually let me know where the heck the rings are, but there is. Let me take this, just put another one out and see if I can figure this out. That's the downside with this one element of vassal. Toggle ring 1. Oh, I can increment it. There we go. That does help. Planet rings. Yep, that lets me determine how thick it is, which is very cool. And let's see, toggle ring 2. This increment ring 2. So shift 2. So this will determine the size of ring 2. There we go. See, notice how it happily generates how big the ring is for you. And it keeps on going out in size and scale. It can go all the way out. So there we go. Let's just make it like that. Make it nice and interesting. And fun for us to look at, along with telling us exactly where everything is. Now, what kind of rings are they? Well, on a 1 through 4, it's gas and dust, and a 5 through 6, it's asteroid. So we go back. Ring 1, what are you? You are gas. Ring 2, you are also gas. So I'm just going to leave it as is. If it were asteroids, I'd actually put little asteroid tokens all around it. But I think a nice hazy blue zone around this planet is nice and cool enough for me. Now, over here, this is also a planet. How big is it? It's a 4. Got to go back and see just how big it is. Because you can have really a whole bunch of big planets. It's another large planet. So as you can see, you just follow this standard operating procedure, and you will find yourself building up a, well, in this case, a particularly dense board. But that's okay. Dense boards are fun. So we have our planet. We now roll to see if it has rings. On a 5, that does mean it has rings. It has D3 rings. Roll it again. That's a 2, so it has 1 ring. Planet rings. Toggle ring 1. Increment ring. And what kind of ring is it? I'm going to deselect because I have it where I want it. It is an asteroid field. Now, the way that I would personally do this is just go into markers. Go to celestial bodies here. Asteroids, and just pick a bunch of these little things to help identify that it is, in fact, maybe a larger one. Just help identify what it is. Probably you want to use the smaller one. Maybe the smaller one will be better for it. Yeah, that smaller one's better. And it'll just help you identify what it is. But yeah, the game, Vassal has all of the information you need to build. And what's 4? 4 on that table is a gas and dust cloud. Now, let's go back to here, gas clouds. Now you're going to want to pick the appropriate one. It's always the top one. And then you select it down. While it's selected, you roll. Boom, you have a gas cloud, and it's already oriented. You place it wherever you want. And here's your board. It's a nice, complicated board. It's I forgot to put the gravity well out, but still does the job. And this would be a ton of fun to play on. Look at this. You were going to be maneuvering all over the place. Imagine having maneuverable battleships and not worrying about turning in regards to locking on to enemies. Imagine doing a Tokyo a Tokyo drift while doing come to new heading in this. It'd be great. Now, one very important thing in regards to planets and turning that they don't really clarify that well in a book. So here we go. We have a nice handy battleship. Now, it is facing directly, say it's facing directly towards the planet. At the beginning of your movement, you can't make a turn. There are no turns from this position that are not towards the planet. You're facing the planet. This and this are away from the planet, so you have no turn. Now, if you're like this, you get a free turn towards the planet. Like this, free turn towards the planet. If you are facing away from the planet, however, both directions are towards the planet. So bear that in mind, okay? Another fun and handy and useful thing. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching this tutorial video. I hope it's been useful, and I hope that this is useful in your future campaigns and battles, at least on Vassal and in the and Tabletop itself. Have a great day, everyone, and have a great new year.